Hello, welcome to my channel, another Bibliophile Reads. My name is Greg, and this is the start of week 5 of the Read What You Own 100 Book Challenge, where I have challenged myself to read 100 books that I already own before buying another book. And all things are looking pretty good for this week. I finished my 26th book, The Day of the Triffids by John Wyndham. I am releasing a full review of this book, so I won't talk about it here, but I will say it is one of my favorite science fiction novels of all time, and it comes highly recommended. I have finished my 27th book, Siddhartha, an Indian Tale by Hermann Hesse, translated from the German and published originally around 1922. Hermann Hesse won the Nobel Prize for Literature, and he was a philosophical novelist. This is his take on Hinduism and Buddhism, which is part of my project to read more about religion, and this is my first fiction about Buddhism. It is the story of a young man's spiritual journey from youth to middle age, old age, and eventually death. It is not quite Buddhism. Hermann Hesse had a fascination with Indian and Buddhist religions, but he was not himself a Buddhist. And this differs a bit because the main character, Siddhartha, meets the Buddha in the story, and Siddhartha acknowledges that the Buddha's teaching are true, but he says, I cannot follow you because that is your teaching, and I need to teach myself and find my own spiritual path. So this is also the story of a rebellious soul who needs to seek out his own meaning in life and not necessarily accept others' teachings. And I also find that fascinating. Now, I will eventually be doing a more in-depth study of this book, or say a more in-depth video of this book when I talk about my entire reading of Buddhist books, which will probably be next month. But as a novel, it's not quite a novel, but it works as a story because I found the journey of Siddhartha at least interesting, even if I don't completely agree with his spiritual and moral findings in the book. Because a man searching for himself and searching for truth in the universe is something that I really enjoy. I finished my 28th book, Willie Masters' Lonesome Wife by William H. Gass. I have read one other book by William Gass, On Being Blue, a philosophical inquiry into the color blue. And I thought that was a great short work of nonfiction. This is his novella, which is highly experimental and postmodern. I do tend to like experimental fiction and postmodern fiction, but this one was kind of a dud. Now, as you can see in the cover, I do have to cover up the cover to please the YouTube algorithm. And I'm going to have to be very careful when I show you inside of this book because there is female nudity. It's not very graphic. It was originally published in 1968. So by nudity terms, it's rather tame. But the problem with this book is that it is being experimental just for the sake of being experimental. And after reading this, I'm not entirely sure 100% what this book was about. It has some very lovely writing, but that's it. It's an exercise in writing. And he does things for inexplicable reasons. Now, here you see one page over here where the text is normal. But on this side, the text is exactly the same, but it's mirrored. Now, maybe if I were a diligent reader or a careful reader, I would see something in this text that justifies the mirrored text on the opposite side, but I'm not that careful of a reader. And maybe that is the problem I have with this book, is that he is asking a lot from the reader, but what does he deliver? In my opinion, he did not deliver a whole lot. And here is a page and a quote. "You've been had from start to finish." And really, that is my summary of this book. I have finished my 29th book. Actually, I finished this a few days ago, but I finished it on a Thursday night, and on Friday morning, my wife and I got on a train to go for an overnight in Philadelphia. Although this is not really book related, I have to say that traveling by train was quite enjoyable. You just drive to the train station, there's a parking lot, you park, you wait for your train, you get on, you show your ticket, and then you get to Philadelphia and you get off. The seats are very close to being a first class seat on an airplane. So it was very relaxing on that train. And it was a 6 hour, or 3 hours each way for a total of 6 hours. So you'll hear more about that in my next book. But the 29th book was The Hour of the Star by Clarice Lispector. This was her final book that she published before she died in 1985 or thereabouts. And it starts off with a male narrator named Rodrigo getting ready to write a book about a female character. At first, this female character is not named. About halfway through the book, you learn her name is Maccabee. I'm probably mispronouncing this Portuguese name. But he describes this young woman as dirt poor. And he had a lot of unflattering descriptions, but the description that stood out to me was that she was like a cold cup of coffee her entire life, which is really not very flattering. And it goes through her life. She grew up in the northeast part of Brazil and moved to the southeast to get a job. And the best job she could get was as a typist. Now, she's not very intelligent. She is not really pretty. And she has trouble understanding some of the words that she has to type. And she's never had a boyfriend, and she is a virgin. And then she hooks up with a man. And he's rather a despicable young man. He works some sort of machine factory, moving pipes around. So he thinks he's going places, but in reality, I think he has, at least from my American perspective, a very low level, non-skilled job, and it does not he's going anywhere. So that's where this book takes you. And it's a very sad book because you see this woman's life and you can see that, yes, she's a person with all her own desires, but she's going nowhere. She will be nothing but that cold cup of coffee her entire life. And this is actually a very interesting book. It is somewhat experimental in nature, but the kind of experimental book that's actually good. Not like my previous Willie Masters' Lonesome Wife, which was a bad experimental book. I do recommend this. This is not a very long book. I read the more recent translation by Benjamin Mosher. There was an earlier translation by someone who I did not write down in my notes. But this one is good. You should pick it up. I have finished my 30th book, Mr. Mercedes by Stephen King. Now, I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail on this, other than it's going to be detailed in a lot more when I have a live show, probably on the 27th of December, where I and Bad and Rad and a few guests are going to do a little book group discussion about this. And after that, we'll be doing the rest of the novels that feature the character of Holly Gabney that Stephen King wrote. And I will say this was an enjoyable book. Most of this was written on the train ride to Philadelphia, because they said I had 3 hours up and 3 hours back. So about 50%, maybe 60% of this book was read on the train. And as I said before, the train was very relaxing and very conducive to just sitting back and reading a book. So what I will say about this book is that it is a mystery novel. It is not a horror novel. Some places call this a hard-boiled detective novel, and it is not hard-boiled. It's definitely a detective novel, but not hard-boiled. And I'll be talking about this in my show, but I really have a problem with the way Stephen King ends his books. I don't want to get in any details because those details will be in the live show, but he just loses all control at the end of his books, at least in my opinion. However, I read this a lot. As I said, I could sit on that train for the 2.5, 3 hours that I was able to read on the train without stopping. It was quite enjoyable. He's very easy to read. It's a non-stressful read. There is one point in the book where it said, "Oh, I did not see that coming." But that's okay. That you need that in a book. So stay tuned for more about Mr. Mercedes on my live show. And that is a wrap for week 5. It's a pretty good week. I finished 5 books, and now on to week 6. Thank you for watching, and keep on reading.